Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This is not going to be really something new. This is just going to be a remake of the Proxmox Pro Liant 380 Gen 9 video with clustering, installation and clustering, sorry. But the reason why I'm making it is because the previous one had a lot of blurring, and I'm gonna remake it in a closed off environment that doesn't really have any access. So there's not gonna be any blurring or anything like that, and you guys can have a um a proper view of everything that's happening behind the scenes. So I don't really have access to the garage currently, but I am going to do it as close to the real thing as possible, and then I will just continue in a virtualized environment. Initially, in a perfect world, um, it's gonna be quick and basically everything that I do, you guys are going to be able to reproduce or re-perform in your own environments. So the way I load my ISOs, I don't really load them via the integrated lights out console anymore. I just grab a USB stick and I load it with Ventoy. It's a quick process. You just download Ventoy from the SourceForge repository that's available, and you are greeted with this file structure. So go ahead and right click on Ventoy to disk and run as administrator. Once that is done, you're gonna be greeted by a Ventoy to disk x86 window with a potentially it reading one of the USB sticks that you currently have plugged into the computer. What you want to do, because exFAT and MBR is not really going to be read by a secure booting server. What you want to do is you want to go into options, make sure that secure boot support is checked, and then go under partition style, make sure GPT is selected, and the Ventoing package is going to change. After that, go back into options, partition configuration, make sure NTFS is selected because we are going to be putting uh, ISO files bigger than 4 GB on our USB stick. So once that is selected, click on OK and click install. Once it'll ask you the device will be formatted, blah blah blah. Yes, you want to continue. Yes, double check. So the status is gonna take a little bit. Usually takes under a minute if it's a USB 3. USB 2 is slightly slower, but once you have it done, what you want to do ideally is once you have that prepared, you are just gonna copy uh, a Proxmox virtual environment ISO to the USB stick. And once that is done, just plug in the USB into one of the USB 3 ports onto your ProLiant 380 Gen 9 server. Boot it up with F11 in the boot menu, and then select to boot from the USB stick. And everything else, I will continue to do in a virtual environment simply because I still don't have access to the garage. As I mentioned, because I don't currently have access to the garage, I will be performing everything in a virtual environment. The settings that you want to enable, sorry, are make sure that your full processor cores are enabled, hyperthreading is enabled, UEFI and secure boot are both enabled. That being said, um, with with those settings, you should be able to boot off of Ventoy, and as soon as you boot off of Ventoy, make sure that you select the Proxmox ISO that's sitting in the root of the USB, and once that gets going, you will be booting inside the ISO installation process. For me, as I said, because I will be going in through a virtual process, it is a little bit different. But once the setup process starts, it is the same regardless what machine you have. All right, and here we are in the installation process. So you are gonna be greeted by the end user license agreement. Uh, Go ahead and click on I agree. and this is where you're gonna be sorry, this is where the installer is asking you where you want to install the Proxmox deployment. For me, I have allocated 16 gigabytes of virtual storage for this purpose. I haven't attached anything else just yet, but that will come as as we complete the setup process. Go ahead and click on next. Select your country with the time zone. For me, because I am in the Montreal region, it doesn't really give me that as an availability, so I kind of have to select Toronto. As for the password, just put something that's easy for you to log in with, and then as for email, I use no@thank.com. Currently, I only have one virtual adapter available for it, and depending on how you have your network structure, um, you can go ahead and edit those settings. I have seen DHCP work and DHCP not work for different people. I don't know. I do apologize. I don't know what causes it to either work or not work. But whenever I'm in a virtual environment, it usually works. Whenever I'm not in a virtual environment, it usually does not work. Make of it as you will. That being said, I will be using the 61, 62, and 63 for my three hosts, and we're gonna go from there. So as soon as I go ahead and complete this and install the two other hosts, I will continue with the recording. Okay, so our environments are now fully installed and booted. Let's go ahead and connect to them. The first environment was 192.168.2.61 semicolon 8006. The second one is 192.168.2.62 semicolon 8006, and the last one is 192.168.2.63 semicolon 8006. So the third one might not boot just yet. That's fine. It's finalizing its booting. We will get around to it in a second. So once our boot environment is all loaded and ready to go, go ahead and just log in to the root environment into each one of the Proxmox instances. The first thing we want to do once we log in is we're gonna go navigate to the updates and repositories. What we're gonna do is we're gonna be enabling the non-subscription repository for the Proxmox environment, as well as for Ceph Reef is the new version rather than Quincy. Just make sure that you enable the no subscription for Reef. And then if you have multiple nodes, you're just gonna go ahead and do the same thing across all three. Basically, what you want to do is you're gonna click on add. You're gonna select OK on the pop-up, and under the repository dropdown, make sure you select no subscription, add, and then Reef, Ceph Reef, no subscription, and then add. Because I've already done that, it's not letting me do that a second time to avoid duplicates. Once you have done that across all of your nodes, go ahead and go navigate to the updates tab, click on refresh, and as soon as your task OK pops up from the web console, go ahead, close this window right here. Close this window and click on the upgrade button. Now that updates are done, go ahead and ideally reboot your nodes so that the new kernel can be activated and that the system can work with it. Okay, we are back in a fully updated and booted in environment. What I had to do a little bit of behind the scene maintenance and add a secondary NIC as well as three storage devices that are going to be attached to both Proxmox and Ceph. So before we go ahead and even think about creating the Ceph storage file system, what you want to do is individually, before you even join the Proxmox hosts in a cluster, there you go. Before you even go ahead and join all the nodes in a cluster, what you want to do is you want to individually install Ceph on all three of them. When you get the setup pop-up, make sure that Reef 18.2 is selected, and under the repository you're using the no subscription repository, and go ahead and click on start Reef installation. Do that for all three of your nodes. There we go. Ceph has just finished installing on one of the first nodes. Once your next button becomes available, go ahead and click on it. And now you are looking at, well, actually, hold on. That's my bad. You go ahead and close the dialog. Make sure that configure Ceph is still available. What you want to do is you want to go under host system network, and under the available interfaces you want to go ahead and create a second Linux bridge under IPv4 CIDR. Ideally, when you have a public network or a monitor network and a Ceph network, those in a perfect world would be separated. So the reason why we're adding a second interface, or we're using, sorry, a second interface, is so that the Ceph synchronization network can be separate from the quote unquote live network that Proxmox is using to communicate with the internet and the rest of the network. So in this scenario, what I'm going to do, my current network and the standard the nomenclature is 192.168.2.1/23, but for the purpose of installing a separate network that's closed off from the rest of the network, we're going to be using a 172.16.16.1/24, and we are going to be bridging ENS192, and this is going to be Ceph closed network interface number 1. So this is the first interface for our Ceph closed network. We're going to go ahead and continue and apply the configuration. Do you want to apply pending network? Yes, we do. We're going to go to PVE number 2. We're going to close that off. We're going to configure it in just a second. System, network, and we're just going to do the exact same thing. So I will finish that with 3 hosts and be right back. Now that our closed network has been created, we're going to go back into the Ceph primary window, and we're going to go continue with Ceph configuration. Public network, you want to leave it under the management interface, but the cluster network, you are going to select the secondary network that you just created. That is going to be your closed network for Ceph. So once you have selected the 2 different interfaces, go ahead and click next. And once it says installation has been successful, go ahead and click on finish. Repeat on the other instances for Proxmox that you have. We're just gonna go ahead and finish that real quick. Now that we have configured Ceph across all 3 of our hypervisors, we are going to go on the primary hypervisor, or the one that we're going to be calling the quote-unquote master hypervisor, and we're going to click on data center, and we're going to select the cluster option. Under the cluster option, we're going to go ahead and click on create a cluster. Under cluster name, it doesn't really matter what you put on it, so just go ahead and Joe's Garage Cluster. This is, by the way, hold on, Joe's Garage. Perfect. works out fine. If you have any additional links that you want to create as a follower, you can go ahead and click on add and just continue adding them and adding them and adding them. Make sure that even though this interface is available, do not select it because it is a closed network. It will not go anywhere. It will error out. Because we're not going to be adding any additional links, we are going to finish with this and we're going to click on create. Oh, it does not look like. Joe's garage. Come on, there we go. No space. So Joe's garage cluster is now finished and node 1 has been added. We're going to go ahead and click on join information and click on copy information. Copy information just copies this whole key in the join information tab, and this is what we're going to be using in the other two installations of Proxmox so that we can join them to the cluster. Go ahead and go navigate over to your second cluster, data center, cluster, join cluster, paste it, and then enter your password. Make sure that this is at least you recognize your peer address to make sure that you are joining into the proper network. It's going to time out in just a minute, but under the primary cluster, under the primary hypervisor, we can see that our second cluster is now joined. And we can close off the second tab, and we're gonna do the same thing for the last hypervisor in our network. So we're gonna go and we're join Joe's garage, and we are gonna be monitoring the progress over here. We're going to play. Okay, this is perfect, resolved. So now we're going to go ahead and close any outstanding tabs that we have on our hypervisors because everything will be manageable through the quote-unquote master hypervisor. Go ahead and scroll down to the monitor tab. Make sure that all three are created. If there's any stopped monitors, just go ahead and start them. And make sure that your managers are as well started. And then it should be able to... Oh no, it doesn't start. Okay. Well, it's probably my fault somewhere in the configuration, but that is something that I will be figuring out after. What we're going to do next is we're going to go over to OSD and we're going to create OSD. Now, something to note is that the hard drives that are attached to each server will only be available when you click on the server itself. They will not be available remotely from one server to the other. So let's go ahead and create some OSDs. Now that the last hard drive has been added, and we can observe the progress in the primary dashboard for Ceph while refreshing it a couple of times, and it will come up in just a second. There it is right there. One of the last things that we just need to do right now is, I think it was pools. Create a pool and just call it VMs storage. Make sure that we're gonna be adding it as a storage. Oh, illegal characters, right. Don't add the space to your naming convention, please. wait that for that to be completed, and once we're gonna be um, collapsing all of our different hypervisors, you can see that now our space is available across the three different um, hypervisors. If you want to be working with high availability, is when you go ahead and click on data center and then scroll down to high availability, you would ideally um, add your three servers as a resource. Hold on. So how was that going on? Oops. Yeah. Go ahead and let's create a group of primary, and then the different priority is just one one above the other. The higher the priority, I think it was the higher the priority, the lower the like it would be considering it lower on the list to act. So one of the nodes that you want to make sure that is always available is going to be 1, and then the backup node is going to be 2, and then the backup to the backup is going to be 3. So you're going to go and create that one as well. And that's pretty much it. When it comes to high availability, we have just finished the storage across all three nodes, and we have created a high availability resource. Okay, I had to do one more little modification, and that's simply because under um Ceph file system, I needed to add at least one more drive. Not gonna find it. Okay, yeah, it does find it. So when there's two types of storage that you're gonna be working on in Ceph. One is the Ceph file system, which allows you to create sort of like an uploadable storage, and then the other one that you have is pool, which allows you to create storage for your virtual machines. So now that we have the a couple of additional hard drives available, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add them to the OSD list again, and we're gonna create a file system. All I did in the background is just add another 100 gigabyte storage to the underlying hypervisor. You need metadata servers. Make sure, guys, that you create your metadata servers. Don't be like me, trying to figure out what's going on. And once that's done, we're gonna go ahead and create our Ceph file file system. As I was saying, the difference between a pool and a Ceph file system is the pool can host your VM storage files, but the Ceph file system can be used as general purpose shared storage between all of the different nodes that you have in your cluster. Here's what I mean by that. If you guys just remember, locally speaking, you have your local storage and you have your local LVM. This is basically the difference. This is your Ceph file system, and this is your Ceph pool. The difference, as you can see, is that one allows you to host images across all different servers, and one actually allows you to host your container volumes and your VM disks. Now that I vaguely remember how to do it, I'm just going to go ahead and upload a Ubuntu server ISO so that we can install a virtual machine, and I will be right back. Our ISO was just finished copying, so we're gonna close this, and we're gonna go ahead and select any node, and we're gonna go ahead and create a new virtual machine. So there's gonna be a small change of plans. Instead of playing with Linux and adding an additional possibly unnecessary layer of configuration. What we're gonna do is we're gonna test it with Windows 10. I have uploaded a generic Windows 10 image, and we're gonna click on next. We're gonna load it from our Ceph file system, the Windows 10 ISO, and we're gonna add the additional VirtIO drivers ISO that's downloaded directly from Red Hat. We're gonna go click into systems, and we are going to set up the EFI storage and the TPM storage in as well, and we're going to activate the QEMU agent. As for a disk, we're going to leave it default, with the exception that we're going to increase the disk capacity to 128 gigabytes. Under CPU, 1 socket, 2 cores, actually 4 cores. Under the type, we're going to move it to host. Memory, we're going to get rid of ballooning, and we're going to leave it at 4096. Under network, we're going to leave it as connected to VMBR0, because this is the internet facing network. We're going to get rid of firewall. And last but not least, we're going to start after creation, and we're going to click on finish. This is going to create our virtual machine right here. And if everything goes according to plan, it will start any minute now. Whenever you guys are installing from a Ceph source, Ceph based source, whether it's gonna be a Ceph pool or a Ceph file system, please do note that the overall process is going to be slower, because your hypervisors are busy replicating data at the same time as writing data. So just remember to be a little more patient with the process whenever you're doing this. Make sure that you are also loading your drivers. So VirtIO, and I believe it was VirtIO store, and we want Windows 10, AMD64. Nope, sorry. It is VirtIO SCSI. Or there's our driver. As soon as it loads, we will be selecting our storage, and we're going to be installing onto it. While Windows 10 was installing, I decided to get a little frisky. And when it comes to high availability, the reason why I say frisky is because I didn't want to restart the setup. So if you want to have high availability as well, on top of having a 3-node cluster and essentially hyperconvergence as well, what you want to do is you're going to select your data center, and you're going to go under the high availability tab. Under groups, you're going to click on create group. You're going to give it an ID, a comment, and you're going to want to select the nodes that you want to be part of that group, and then you're going to give them priority 1, 2, and 3 respectively. The higher the priority, the lower it is on the queue list. I have to read up on that. I'm fairly certain that's how it is, but it could be the other way around. I will put it in the description section when I do. So once you have your group created, you're gonna go back to high availability, and you're gonna add a resource. You're gonna select the VM in question that you want to be highly available across your different machines, and then you're going to select the group. Under max restart, you're gonna leave it as 1. Request state, you're gonna leave it as started, and max relocation, you're gonna leave it at the maximum amount of hosts that you have into your group. So if you have 3 hosts, you're gonna put it at 3. If you have 5 hosts, you're gonna put it at 5. If you have 10 hosts, you're gonna put it at 10, so on and so forth. And then leave yourself a little comment saying what this group is, or maybe which virtual machine it affects. The reason why I'm saying I got a little frisky with the virtual machine is because I'm barely at halfway. Again, the process does take a little bit of time, but let's say for whatever reason, hold on, before we do anything, let's make sure it's active on 1 and 3. So let's go ahead and disconnect in number 3. 3, 2, 1. Oh no, disaster has struck. In a second, the cluster is going to lose quorum. Actually, let's see if I can refresh it. There we go. So one of our nodes is offline, but as you guys can see, our VM is in the process of being moved. So just any minute now, it should pop back up in PVE1. It did take a little longer than I was anticipating to, but the virtual machine did come back. However, with a slight difference in the state. It rebooted completely, and that means I'm just gonna have to start the installation process from the beginning. Finally, we are fully booted into our Windows 10 virtual machine. Network isn't exactly resolved yet. It'll keep giving me unidentified host until I figure it out, but that's gonna be just a little further down the road. And we are going to test one last thing. We are going to bring the shutdown host back online, and we are going to see if network is going to get restored. The host is back online, and the machine has started migrating. And it shouldn't take too long. As you can see, the process has begun. And it has been migrated back to host number 3. If we go back under data center, high availability, and we edit, the higher the priority, the higher the machine will be on the list. Let's just make sure that that's exactly it. So PVE1 would be priority 3. Yes, so the higher the priority, then it would be just a correction to what I said earlier. The higher the priority, the higher on the list it is. Obviously, you guys are gonna have to figure out networking, but that's probably something that I'm gonna be working on. And as you can see, as migration is in the process, the virtual machine gets a save state. Once it's transferred on to the other host, it is brought back into its current state. This was a remake of the guide of how to get from 0 to a fully highly available cluster. Thank you for joining me, and Happy New Year.